Well, good afternoon and welcome to the Aspinall Annual Awards Luncheon. We're looking very much forward to learning who gets the award this year, but welcome to each and all of you. And you know, the sun's turned back around, you know, the days are getting longer, and wouldn't it be something to be young and in love? Or any age and be in love? And that's why I think for an invocation today, I wanted to summon up Delph Carpenter's parents. Now, Delph Carpenter was the architect of the interstate compacts, and he was a first-generation descendant of the Union colony, founded near the confluence of the Poudre and the Platte in 1870. Well, the railroad had just come into Evans, and Leroy was out here with some of his family, and he was courting his bride-to-be, Martha, by letter. And the letters went back and forth on the Union Pacific and Kansas Pacific railroads that had just come in to Colorado. So the great Dan Tyler, historian, has put together a book with his friend Betty of the letters of Leroy and Martha Carpenter. And they're deep and profound as they establish the ground with each other for this relationship, which then gives birth to the great Delph Carpenter, the architect of the compact. So I just wanted to read you, as a way of an invocation today, a little bit of this interchange between the two of them. So on October 2nd, 1871, Martha wrote Leroy from her home in eastern Iowa, quote, "I should not certainly fear those numerous ditches if I could have some carpenters to keep me from falling into them." So they were building the number 2 and the number 3 ditches, and Leroy was writing about the ditches, and they had this banter among themselves about who would carry whom across the ditches. On January 14, 1872, Leroy suggested that they would carry each other across. Quote, "And when we come to these ditches, I may carry you over, and then you may carry me over. Will that suit you?" Okay, so they're going to do this back and forth carry over the ditches. Now, this Martha was quite the wit and quite playful and literate when you think about it, her sense of humor with this courtships. So this is how she responds. And I would say that Martha was responding playfully, while clearly established that their relationship would be based on mutual consent. Quote, "I don't know whether I shall consent to carry you over the ditches or not." Well, the great Delph Carpenter, born of that family, and so many others have carried us over the ditches, into the hills, into the mountains, into the forested watersheds. And we have a great state that arose just shortly after the Union colony, but there before on the land were the Hispanos in southern Colorado and the Utes all over Colorado. And so our heritage goes long way back, and it goes a long way forward. And so we ask the Lord to bless us as we eat together, companions in Colorado, in its past and its present and its future. Lord, bless us and sustain us.
Good afternoon. Water author Susan Marks wrote in 2009, "Water is personal, water is local, water is regional, water is statewide. Everybody has a different idea, a different approach, a different issue, a different concern. Water is the most personal issue we have." Colorado Water Congress exists in large part to bring together all of those ideas, approaches, issues, and concerns, and find consensus when we can. We are here today to honor those who have taken a lead role in that effort. Welcome to the Aspinall Awards. We hope you enjoy your lunch.
Once again. All right, it's my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker while we're eating lunch today. Alan Mickelson is the Deputy Commissioner of the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation. Alan, would you like to come up and please tell us something about yourself? Because I don't have anything to say about that.
Thank you, and it's great to be here. By way of introduction, I'm a little bit embarrassed to say this because I was introduced as Deputy Commissioner. I'm going to be Deputy Commissioner for probably about another 5 days or so. I am inheriting a new title. I've spent the last 8 or 9 months serving as Acting Commissioner for Reclamation, and I will now become the Senior Advisor to the Secretary for Water and Resource Issues in the Western States. That's the full title. And I am going to be stationed here in Denver, which is a godsend to me. I spent way too many years in Washington, D.C. I am a native of Montana. My wife still lives in Montana, and I get to see her about once a month. And so I'm actually looking forward to at least a little bit shorter commute. Unfortunately, it costs just as much to fly from Denver to Missoula as it does from Washington, D.C. to Missoula, because we are captive to that lovely airline called United, at least until that other lovely airline, Frontier, starts flying seasonally. I'm going to talk about reclamation, though, because I have a real passion for reclamation, and I want to introduce this and kind of the way that I've introduced it several other times over the last several months that I was serving as Acting Commissioner. My earliest memories in life, some of my earliest memories in life, I was probably about 6 years old, and I was on a tractor that had a hand clutch, and those kind of tractors did not have power steering, and I was following my father across a newly seeded field, laying out a contour ditch for irrigation. Now, I don't know how many of you are even familiar with that process anymore, but we used what was called a grasshopper, or other people would call it a ditch level. It's about 20 feet long. It's about 1 inch shorter on one end than on the other end, and you laid it out to where it was level, and then you plowed that 20 feet, and then you did the next 20 feet. And I was the one that was sitting on the tractor, easing that hand clutch ahead in 20-foot increments, and he would have to come back and maybe turn the steering wheel for me a little bit, because a 6-year-old is not going to steer a tractor with absolutely no power steering on it. But those were some of my earliest memories of life, was putting in contour ditches at that time, and it wasn't shortly thereafter, maybe 6 years later, we had actual sprinkler systems, hand lines, of course, at that time. But this is a little bit of a convoluted story. As I grew up, I could remember my dad coming in for breakfast as chores were done, and he would say, "Well, I've got to call the rec for water today." And it was, "I've always got to call the rec for water." And I'm sure that's a familiar refrain for all of you. I grew up on a federal irrigation project. The strange thing about this, though, and here's the rest of the story, I grew up on a BIA irrigation project. The Bureau of Reclamation designed that project and started building it in 1910. In 1925, they transferred it to Bureau of Indian Affairs. My father was not born until 1930. So 5 years before my father was born, Bureau of Reclamation facility was transferred to Bureau of Indian Affairs. And I'm talking now about times in the late 50s and early 60s when he would come into the house and say, I've got to call the rec for water. He never even grew up with reclamation. But this is the point of the story. Reclamation was so ubiquitous with water and water deliveries and with irrigation that we all just assumed that we still had a reclamation project. I never remember growing up anybody in the world saying, I've got to go call BIA for water. It didn't happen. So what we want to do in reclamation and what we've been trying to do for the last 9 or 10 months is we want to bring that back to reclamation. We want to make reclamation what it was again. The president talks about making America great again. We just want to make reclamation great again. We want to build things. We want to make sure that we have great relationships with our stakeholders and with our contractors and with everybody else that we do business with. We've tried to focus our emphasis on client satisfaction and rebuilding and repairing relationships that, perhaps over the last several years have not been the best necessarily. So, with that introduction, let me talk a little bit about where reclamation is at right now, and I think what you have to look forward to. And I will, when I say this, I will also preface it by saying that I am going to maintain a really strong relationship with reclamation going forward as senior advisor to the secretary. I have a passion for irrigated agriculture, for reclamation, and for the entire reclamation mission. And as I have told everybody as I'm leaving, I am still going to be mucking about in your business. We have Brenda Berman came in December. She's now actually been sworn in and is the Commissioner of Reclamation. Brenda is the first woman to serve in this position, and she has an extensive background in Western water and in energy policy. She served as Deputy Commissioner of Reclamation of External and Intergovernmental Affairs from 2006 through 2008, and then served as Deputy Assistant Secretary for Water and Science that oversaw reclamation policies. And at this juncture, I want to take just a little bit of a dive to say that reclamation is part of the Water and Science hallway in Interior. We are overseeing, reclamation is overseen by the Assistant Secretary for Water and Science. And I am going to make the statement, and I don't think that it's, a lot of people will disagree with me, is that Water and Science is probably the strongest hallway we have right now in Department of Interior. We have great leadership in the Water and Science hallway at Department of Interior. We have Brenda serving as Commissioner of Reclamation. We have Tim Petty, who was just sworn in literally 2 weeks ago as Assistant Secretary for Water and Science, and he served as a Deputy Legislative Director and Legislative Assistant on water, natural resource, environment, science, technology, telecommunications, and space issues for Jim Risch, Senator Jim Risch of Idaho. And he also served in the past Bush administration as a acting Assistant Secretary and Deputy Assistant Secretary of Water and Science. So he's totally familiar with reclamation and with the Water and Science hallway. And then we've got two more Deputy Assistant Secretaries in the Water and Science hallway, Austin Ewell and Andrea Travnik. And Austin and Andrea are both absolute rock stars in my book when it comes to water issues. They 100% get water development and water for both irrigation, for power, and for all other uses. Austin's from Fresno, California, great knowledge of the Central Valley Project. Andrea is from North Dakota and has worked with the Garrison Diversion Unit folks and is a real solid performer there too. So I think that you can feel comfortable going forward for the next few years with the Water and Science Hallway and with reclamation, because it is in really, really good hands. I'll give you a few upgrades now, or updates on a number of issues affecting reclamation as we go forward here, and I will start with departmental reorganization. I'm sure that you all read about the reorganization of Department of Interior, and all I can tell you is that this is literally up in the air, literally at probably still a 30,000-foot level. And we had a summit in D.C. a couple weeks ago. I was in D.C. for the summit, and I was reading E&E News about the summit. And I was actually, the reporting was so bad on whoever was leaking to them that I was actually embarrassed for E&E News, because it bore no resemblance to reality and what we were actually talking about and what the Secretary's goals are. So whatever you read in the news at this point, I would read with a fairly skeptical eye, because like I said, we are still at a 30,000-foot level, and there is we have a long way to go on our reorganization. The Secretary has released a statement saying that he does fully support President Trump and the taxpayers' vision to reorganize the federal government in a way that it will make the executive branch more lean, accountable, and efficient, while still allowing the government to deliver core services. And that's the sum total of the formal statement. And then, as far as secretarial priorities go, we have been working with the Secretary on a number of his priorities, and his priorities for reclamation include improved infrastructure, sustainable water supplies, and power for the future. Of course, you've heard about the infrastructure initiative of the administration, and that is still being developed, but reclamation, I can tell you, is ready to move forward on water-related infrastructure investments, and we are pointing out to both the White House and to the department that reclamation does have the largest infrastructure within Department of Interior as far as what we continually build, maintain, and rehabilitate. We are refining those lists, and we're providing information to the department on a constant basis about our capabilities and excuse me, about new programs, activities, and initiatives that will be cost shared with all of our contractors and stakeholders. Interior has been looking at market-based tools and innovative public-private collaborations to do a number of things, include conserve natural resources, enhance more efficient water allocation, and to promote increased investments in critical infrastructure. And as part of that, one of the first things I did in the first couple of months I was here is attend a conference here in Denver that we called the P3 Conference. And throughout the country, what we have is aging infrastructure, demand is growing, and we all know that appropriations are increasingly difficult across all the agencies given the financial or fiscal situation of the federal government. And so one of the most pressing issues that face reclamation is our need to update, maintain our infrastructure and all the costs that are related to that. And so what we're looking at is what we call P3, or public-private partnerships and alternative financing that are, we believe, that can be options to address those needs. And so in early May, we hosted a water infrastructure and financing forum here in Denver. That forum brought together over 200 public and private entities to discuss potential water resource projects for public-private partnerships. We also issued a request for information from interested parties, and we have received approximately 40 responses from a variety of parties, including investment banks, private equity firms, engineering companies, energy associations, and nonprofits. And some groups provided comment letters on the overarching possibility of reclamation engaging in future P3 opportunities, and others responded with specific questions regarding the 5 potential projects that we showcased at that particular P3 and request for information that we had released. And our P3 report was recently published on the Reclamation website, and it can be found at usbr.gov/P3. And so I would invite you to take a look at that. But as we're talking about this, the one thing that I want to emphasize is that while we are pursuing and hopefully maybe developing public-private partnerships, we are not going to leave our traditional model of public-public partnerships behind. All financing models are extremely important to us, and we will continue to focus on partnerships of all types, which brings me to one that I am personally vested in and really want to do everything that we can from the Secretary's level to promote. And we need to, I think, get back to some of our low-interest loans, loan guarantee programs, and that small project loan program that we've had for so many years. A lot of these things are still on the books, but they are not being financed with any kind of dollars, and we really need to go back and take a look at that, because low-interest loans and that kind of program is, I think, where we have to go on a number of these things. And I don't know how much time I have here, but if I get too carried away, I'm sure that somebody will ring the bell. Ring the bell on me, because I want to spend just a little bit of time talking about this financing. One of the issues that I had with some of the organizations that and projects, not organizations, but projects that we showcased at our P3 conference in May was exactly what we did showcase. And I'm not trying to throw stones at any conference, any project or anything like that, but I'll single out one in particular. One of the presentations that we heard about in May was the Eastern New Mexico Regional Water System. The Eastern New Mexico Regional Water System serves or will serve, if it's built out, about 60,000 people. Right now, the estimated cost of that is $400 million. And those people are expected to finance that at some point. How are 60,000 people going to finance $400 million? That doesn't work. I mean, you can do the math in your head or on a napkin or whatever, but that math does not work. At the same time, and just before we had that conference, I'm sitting in my office in Washington, D.C., reviewing grant applications for WaterSmart and for wind funding and things like that. And I'm looking at all these grant applications from these municipalities in California. I'm going to pick on California a little bit here. And, you know, we've got grant applications and financing applications coming in for hundreds of millions of dollars, and in some instances, in some of these municipal areas, approaching $1 billion. And I was looking at those thinking, you know, yes, that is an awful lot of money, but they've got 10 million people that they can charge repayment costs to. And it's a lot easier to repay $800 million or $1 billion with 10 million people than it is to repay $400 million with 60,000 people. And I thought to myself, as I was reviewing the P3 conference, we should have been showcasing those kinds of entities that can actually cash flow, and we should be saving our public money for public partnerships with places like eastern New Mexico or projects in Colorado, in rural Colorado, that aren't going to be able to finance or cash flow private financing. And so that was kind of you've been exposed to my diatribe, I guess, on financing. I do feel really strongly about it because over the years, as a natural resource consultant, most of my clients have been probably small water projects, irrigation districts, and things like that don't have a lot of ability to reach out for public financing. Okay, enough on that. Storage. And I also approached this from, I guess, being in the water industry for 30 years, and I will make this comment on storage. Conservation is great, and we all support conservation. I support conservation 100%. But you can't conserve your way. For instance, and I'll pick on California again, you can't conserve your way to 50 million people. Here in Colorado, you're not going to be able to conserve your way to 10 million people. You have got to have storage at the end of the day. And that is a top concern for reclamation. We recognize that. We want to continue to promote that. We want to partner on that. And we are involved in feasibility studies across the West in various areas to help create more storage. And it becomes even more important when we take a look at what we're facing with change in weather patterns, with drought. With all due respect to my perception, let me say that, of Colorado, I've spent a dozen years in Washington, D.C., or probably more than that over the years. I've never ever had a car in Washington, D.C. When I came to Interior in early April, the secretary said, okay, he said, I need somebody at Reclamation until we can get a commissioner confirmed and seated, but then after that, he said, I really want you to serve as senior advisor. And he said, you might be able to go to Colorado for that. I thought, okay, that's great, closer to Montana. But I have never ever owned a vehicle in Washington, D.C. I've rented a vehicle a very few times, but I've done very little driving in Washington, D.C. So I get ready to come to Colorado, and I decide that I obviously need a vehicle here because you don't have much for a metro or anything like that I was used to in D.C. So at home, I had a crew cab diesel pickup, my wife's car, which she's not going to surrender, and a 1997 Jeep TJ. And so I decided, okay, I'm going to bring the Jeep to Colorado, but, I don't drive it a lot in the wintertime in Montana or anything like that, and I know that Denver, Colorado, to me, was just about like Montana. You guys are only about 2 barbed wire fences from the North Pole. We're only 1 barbed wire fence. So I was home just right after Thanksgiving, or before I left from my Thanksgiving break at home. I took my Jeep into the local shop and I said, okay, I want to make sure that I've got a tank heater in this thing because I'm going to Colorado and it's really cold in Colorado. Well, I get to Colorado the 9th of December, and ever since then, you all have been warmer than Washington, D.C. and Montana. And to be blunt, that is not a good thing. I love sitting in my office looking out at the foothills there in Lakewood and seeing that blue sky and sunshine, and all I can think about is there is no snow and there is no water. And so, it is what it is, but we need storage. When that water comes, we need to be able to store it. The WIN Act is providing us with some storage opportunities. That's Water Infrastructure and Improvements to the Nation Act. It was enacted in December of 2016, and the Secretary has a strong desire to maximize the use of the WIN storage funds to create new federal and non-federal water storage as soon as possible, and we are moving forward in a number of areas on that. Reclamation was appropriated $67 million in fiscal year 2017, funding for wind structure or for wind storage activities. We were not able to spend that, but that money does carry over, does move forward with us, and we're getting another $67 million, we believe, in 2018. And we've conducted a pretty thorough analysis of all potential and ongoing water storage projects reclamation-wide while preparing for proposed allocation of wind storage funding for this year. And we are going to be proposing an allocation of that wind storage funding in the coming weeks. Congressional perspectives and report language will be taken into account, as will the need to complete studies and use available funds wisely. So, enough about storage. On mussels, and invasive mussels are what we call AIS, aquatic invasive species. It's particularly here in Colorado and to a lesser extent in Montana, we all know what a serious threat to our bodies of water all the way throughout the country that is. The Montana legislature, and Montana is not a wealthy state by any stretch, and we've seen the downturn in oil and gas revenues the last biennium and just they're barely starting to come back. The Montana legislature actually appropriated $10 million this last biennium for AIS, invasive species inspection stations and work in Montana. And then there are some local entities, for instance, the Salish Kootenai tribe in western Montana, where Flathead Lake is, actually came up with another $1 million of their own money just to make sure that they had inspection stations set up. Because what happens is that we all know the problems that we have at Lake Mead with AIS, and then all of those folks put their boats on the trailer, and then they come to Colorado, and then I call Flathead Lake in western Montana and Coeur d'Alene Lake in northern Idaho attractive nuisances, because all these people then want to bring their boats then from Lake Mead to Colorado and then on to Montana as the summer progresses, and we're picking up infected boats right now at inspection stations in Montana, and we're just holding our breath. The Columbia River system, of which western Montana is literally the headwaters for, is the only, I think, uninfected major river system in the entire United States now, and so we're really working to keep that clean to the maximum extent possible. And we are, Interior has begun an initiative that includes a team of more than 70 experts from federal agencies, from states, and from tribes. And together we've identified a package of 45 actions that we believe will help prevent, contain, and control invasive mussels across the West. And Reclamation has the lead on 9 of these actions and is a co-lead on a number of others. And our goal is to prevent and contain the spread of invasive mussels by inspection stations, enhancing of sampling and detection efforts, and convening workshops to share best management practices. In fiscal year 2017, Reclamation's budget was increased by $1 million to help pay for some of these actions, and in 2018, Interior has requested Congress to provide Reclamation with another $3.5 million in addition to our existing appropriations. And so we are taking this very seriously, and look forward to partnering with the states and with groups and organizations like this as we move forward on invasive species. Another thing that I would like to discuss very briefly is what's called Secretarial Order 3355, and this should have a major impact on this organization and on all the work that you do. We know, all of us know that have been in this business for very long, that lengthy environmental compliance processes are something that we all deal with on a daily basis. And to that end, the Secretary issued what's called Secretarial Order 3355 to expedite these processes. And the following Secretarial Order requirements are now in effect. There are page limits for environmental impact statements on all Department of Interior environmental impact statements. All of Reclamation's EISs, for which we are the lead or co-lead, that have not reached the drafting stage when SO 3355 was issued, shall be, and I'm quoting, no more than 150 pages or 300 pages for unusually complex projects, excluding appendices. That is a significant cut for those of you that have worked with those issues. I worked on an EIS for one project I was involved in for 5 or 6 years, and then the contractor that we were working with came back and said, we really can't make this fit into an EIS. This should be no more than an EA with a FONSI. And that's after 6 years of work and literally almost $10 million and a stack of documents actually about that high. We finally got to the conclusion that we could have done an EA and a FONSI. Come on, folks. And then the time limit for EISs, we have a target to complete each final EIS for which we're the lead or co-lead agency, and I quote again, within 1 year of the issuance of a notice of intent to prepare an EIS. And the initial timeline must be developed before issuing the notice of intent. And if we deviate from that, we have to have approval by the Assistant Secretary if we believe that the page limits or time limits have to be exceeded. So, title transfer. Secretary, how am I doing for time? Okay, thank you. Secretary Zinke has expressed strong interest in transferring reclamation projects and facilities to non-federal entities. And I'm not going to go through all of this, but rest assured that title transfer is one of the top things on our priority list in this coming 3 or 4 years. And we've testified a couple of times in Congress to that extent, and we will continue to do so. Real briefly, I don't think it has a lot of effect on you all here in the Upper Basin, but we did get what we call Minute 323 signed with Mexico on the Colorado River Water Treaty, and that will remain in effect through the end of 2026. It provides an additional 9 years of operational certainty for the U.S. and Mexico, and water users in both countries will be able to continue to more proactively plan for a range of water supply conditions. And it also has Mexico sharing in shortages, which is a great thing. Okay, moving on as quickly as possible, I'll speak just a couple of minutes about Indian water rights settlements. Reclamation has, for better or for worse, over the last decade or so, become probably the preeminent funding source for Indian water rights settlements. We actually fund more Indian water rights settlements and fund a greater amount of dollars than Bureau of Indian Affairs. They still kick in, but we not only fund them, we construct them. And I am the chair, I'm called the chairman of the working group of the Secretary's Indian Water Rights Office, which is a mouthful, but that means that I oversee all Indian water rights settlements for the department, and will continue to do so even as my in my new role as senior advisor. So, if there is anything that I want you to take away from this overly lengthy, probably exposition that I've rendered today, I want you to know that we, in reclamation, we are busy working for you, our stakeholders, and we want to do everything that we can to make sure that we have good, positive outcomes for our clients, stakeholders, contractors. The Secretary, and I've emphasized this in every stakeholder meeting I've had, the Secretary has charged us with getting to yes. That does not mean that we will agree with everybody all the time. But if we don't agree, we are not going to tell you, sorry, we can't do that. Goodbye. We will do whatever we have to meet with you, to try to come up with a solution that would at least be a positive outcome for everybody. And so to the extent that we can work with you on getting to yes on your issues, we want to do that. We appreciate your partnership, when we appreciate the participation that we've had with groups and organizations like this as we move forward. For many years, I was involved with National Water Resources Association and knew a lot of you from those years, and it's good to be back. I got to come out of retirement to do this for the Secretary, and my wife is still questioning my sanity on that, but thank you, and God bless. Let the water flow.
Somebody once told me the world is gonna roll me. I ain't the sharpest tool in the shed. She was looking kind of dumb with her finger.
Does anyone have any questions? We can take maybe one or two questions for Alan. Anybody?
Thank you.
Okay, let me say that we're really excited to have you in Denver. You will be hearing from a lot of our membership, I'm sure. Thank you. All right, we're going to take a few minutes for our drawings, and then we'll get to the Aspinall Award. Carla DeMasters, are you? Oh, sorry, I'm like blind. Carla's with Westervelt. You're not Carla. Is that what you're going to say?
I'm Meg. Come on over. Carla has a Yeti cooler that people have put their cards in for a drawing, and I'm going to be the official drawer. So exciting. And the winner is Meg Meyer. No. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. And the winner is Jean Packer. Yay, Jean. Jean, pick up the cooler after the Aspinall Award. Thanks. Next, we have Stephanie Ruitz with United Water and Sanitation. They are giving away what size TV is that?
55-inch with Roku.
Whoa. We will stir up the batter. And? Oh. And the winner is Brent Shantz. Woo! Brent, pick up this after the Aspinall Award. And next we have Chuck Adams. He's with One Up Aerial Drone Services. I will add that he is my neighbor. Hi, Chuck.
Hi, Meg. How are you?
I am good.
I
And
brought the drone.
is this the drone to give
drone.
away?
Whoever did this morning, I love it. I wasn't here until a little bit later, but they left it
That
out
was
there.
Chris Woodka. Chris,
love
please stand up.
So the drone.
Yeah, that was Chris.
I do have one thing to say. Just a quick thank you. This is my second year in participating with the Colorado Water Congress. And Doug and Meg and Shanae, my hat's off to you. We've got a little drone for your office here. It's called a power-up paper airplane drone. So it's kind of in the theme of what Chris left for me.
That's wonderful.
But it's for the Colorado Water Congress. Take it and fly it away. If you hit Doug or anything, it's not my responsibility. I am
Shanae and I will test this out.
perfect. Little camera, I want to see pictures from
Sounds
it.
good.
So thank you.
Perfect.
All right,
like to
here
do
we go. What we do, by the way, is if you need drones, I've did kind of an informal poll. There's probably 60% of you today that are looking at large bodies of water, land masses. We sell drones, we do the services, videos, 3D mapping, modeling, and we do corporate training. So please call us, look us up, and love to work with y'all. Thank you very much. And the winner is
And the winner is?
John Hickenlooper.
The winner is Paige Wheel of Linker Technologies. Paige?
Sounds good. Where do you want me to leave this?
Where's the drum roll? This is what we've been waiting for. I'm glad you're all here to celebrate the 2018 Aspinall Award winner. Before I do that, I want to introduce to you the past Aspinall winners, and I hope they will stand up as I call their name for a warm welcome. I want to start over here on my right, your left, Eric Wilkinson. Thank you, Eric. Dick Bratton. Bill Trampy. Hank Brown. Alan Hamill. Louis Entz. John Porter. Harold Miskell. David Robbins. Gail Norton. Jim Lockhead. What an all-star cast here. And thank you for all the Aspinall winners being here. Thank you to all of you. It's been a great conference. It's been a great convention. I had my noise gauge out in the foyer. There was some transactions taking place. There was old stories being told. I think it was a great success, and my hat's off to the Water Congress staff, Doug and the girls. Very good. I have a little housekeeping here before we get to the exciting conclusion. How was the Aspinall winner selected? And so Doug first told me I had 45 minutes to read through the whole process. So I'm going to try to do it in 4 or 5 seconds, David. The nominations come from the membership. And when the nominations are received, there's a nomination committee, and then that's passed on to the past recipients. And we had some great nominees this year. There's only one winner, but we had lots of good nominees. Out of that, I want to talk just briefly about what the nominee should demonstrate. This award, established in 1980, is presented to that person exemplifying the courage, dedication, knowledge, and leadership qualities shown by Wayne Ann Aspinall in the development, protection, and preservation of the water of the state of Colorado. So without further delay, if we are teed up, take it away.
While in high school, I filled my free hours and started my college fund, laboring at various after-school and summer jobs that convinced me there was great potential merit in obtaining a college degree. My specialties were pancakes, grilled to a golden brown, ready to serve when the vapor stopped rising from the edges. I could also make a toilet shine and dance an electric floor scrubber in concentric circles from one end of a hall to the other, removing a decade of black scuffs while buffing the surface to a glassy, slippery shine. I will freely admit that the continuing value of these particular accomplishments remains in doubt.
It is now time to begin our novel.
His command of the English language, his love of literature, of history, makes him an extraordinary writer.
I just remember hearing him read phrases and then say, comma, period, end quote, comma, all the time.
We were all very pleased that he decided not to be an English teacher.
Mark's work has left Colorado more respected in the water world. He's had an important impact in the water community.
Mark and I have known each other for over 30 years. When he came to work in Colorado Springs as an attorney in a firm that was doing a lot of work for the Colorado Springs utilities where I worked. He did a lot, not only for Colorado Springs, but he did a lot for the state of Colorado and the West in the areas of water quantity, water quality, and environment. Working through the Colorado Water Congress, the National Water Resources Association, and numerous other organizations.
Mark took his duties at the Water Quality Control Division very seriously. I do think that significant progress was made in the water quality area. He was known for working with the dischargers rather than against the dischargers. That's probably the hallmark of what Mark has been able to accomplish, because he works with you for his goals rather than against you for his goals.
He chooses his words wisely, and he always listens.
To Mark, kindness matters. He never says an unkind word about anyone, excluding politicians and IT customer support personnel from that category. Very little challenges Mark.
I know he's active in federal legislation, state legislation, as it relates to water. Probably the one that surfaces the most is the protection of Colorado water on the Colorado River. I'm always amazed how Mark's been able to navigate that, coming from a position of strong east slope use of Colorado River water. Although our careers were divergent, we were always able to maintain a close personal friendship, but he's never been able to beat me at golf.
He's a very good attorney. He's very committed to his work and whatever he's attempting to accomplish. He strives for excellence. And with all of those attributes on your side, I mean, how can you not win?
Aurora has this tradition of naming their facilities after their previous utility directors. I told Mark, I said he should be ready to have a sewage pump station named after him.
Exceptionally good man. He's a loving husband and father.
That sort of unconditional support and love has always been at the forefront of his way of being.
How do you think he would react, or what he might say if he knew he was getting this award?
Oh gosh. He'll be very pleased and very proud that he will have been selected to be a member of this group of awardees.
I think it's hard for him to find any way to acknowledge his accomplishments in many ways. ways. I think it's hard for him to find words because he doesn't do it for those reasons. He does it because it's the right thing to do.
Thank you for all that you've done for all of us in Colorado and the West. And thank you most of all for being a good friend over the last 30+ years.
Congratulations, Mark. It's an award well earned.
Would you help me in welcoming Mark Pfeiffer, 2018 Aspinall Award winner?
Thank you. I don't know what to say. I am definitely pleased, and I just want to acknowledge what a privilege it is to be in the company of the people that are sitting up front here. It's just incredible. These are people that have devoted their life to doing the right thing, and not just accomplishing it, but when you look at people like Eric Wilkinson and Alan Hamill and Harold Miskell, it's the way they did it. They founded their mission based on core principles that they followed throughout their careers, and they acted as statesmen, even when Harold once in a while got a little upset. And I can remember the first time I came to Colorado Springs, and I started doing legal work for CSU, and Harold came and said, you know, you should be involved in an organization that I'm heavily involved in. It's called the Colorado Water Congress. And we have this other fellow working for us named Kuharek, and he does a lot of work for us at the Capitol. And Harold brought me to my first Water Congress meeting, and I remember that because it was a little intimidating. Glenn Saunders was there, and of course Dick McGravy, and some of the old water buffaloes, if you will. And I said, wow, you know, what kind of a group is this? Of course, a few years later, Dick may be the head of the State Affairs Committee, so I knew what kind of a group it was, cantankerous group. But it was wonderful, and I, you know, after working for CSU, working on the Homestake project, I eventually did move on back to law practice, and the lawyers in the legal community in Colorado are just plain outstanding. I mean, Hill and Robbins and Davis, Graham and Stubbs and Carlson, Hammond and Paddock, and all the lawyers, just first-class people, not just good lawyers, but first-class people. So it's been a wonderful journey, and I'm so proud of the agreements we were able to forge, the Eagle River MOU that eventually will allow Homestake Phase 2 to be built, I hope. The Prairie Waters project that Peter Binney started and I got to finish for Aurora, a project that everyone, the environmental community and water providers supported and get behind. It was a consensus project. The WISE partnership, the wave of the future, I think, with Denver and Jim Lockhead's help and the South Metro Water Providers Group. Just an excellent concept brought to fruition that'll mean so much to this community in the future. And my time at the Water Quality Control Division, Ron Falco and Dave Akers, Dick Parkini, people you've all worked with over the years. They're dedicated, hard-working individuals. I remember taking a tour of the state with Dave Akers and an honorary member of the division, Barb Biggs, because we needed to raise money. We needed to have all the water providers and wastewater discharges in the state support the state program. So we went from all corners of the state by car, and people, when they understood the importance, got behind those programs. And then I got an opportunity to come back to Colorado Springs and work on Southern Delivery System, another one of those reuse projects that'll mean stability for Colorado Springs water supply for a long time into the future. And the staff there, I mean, Kevin and Abby and Mark and Dan, and at the time for Southern Delivery, Keith and John, just first-class people. So knowledgeable, so dedicated. It's just truly an honor. Two other people I want to mention, though, because they were so instrumental in my standing here today. One is my son, Jeff. The music you heard in the background on that great video was his music. He wrote it, he plays it. He's a jazz musician in Los Angeles. A little different than his dad. I think he gets this talent from me. It's just undiscovered. But you know, he demonstrated to me that there's only so far you can take cynicism, and sometime you have to pursue your dream and see it to its end, and he's done that, and I really admire him for that. And the other one is the love of my life, my wife, Wendy, and she's put up with all the change that I've gone through, all the moving from here to there, because she's a person that really doesn't embrace change the way I do. I mean, I look at it as a challenge. I mean, they say millennials will have 12 to 15 jobs before the end of their careers. I was ahead of my time. But she stuck with me all the time, was always supportive. She went to law school at DU at night while working and raising Jeff, and eventually became a managing partner at this little firm called Holland & Hart. And I'm so proud of her. And I just want to say that this award is sort of the culmination of all the things I've done and the frosting on the cake. Thank you.
Mark, you have some visitors here that want to celebrate with you, and as they make their way up here. I also want to recognize the artist, Barbara East. Please give her a hand. Woo. Okay, we want to. This is really a good part right here. There it is, Mark. Thank you. The 2018 Aspinall Award winner. All right, you're welcome to come up, or we're going to be taking photos. Doug, right over here. All right, thank you. That concludes our award ceremony. Thank you for participating. Feel welcome to come up here and congratulate Mark and his family.